Most travelers know Uganda for one thing: mountain gorillas. But beyond the famous trekking routes are volcanic mountains, the source of the Nile, enormous lakes, endless savannas, and landscapes so diverse that Winston Churchill once called it the Pearl of Africa. And most visitors never explore that far. Uganda isn't simply a wildlife destination. It's one of the most geographically varied countries on the African continent, and most travelers only ever scratch the surface. What people think Uganda is. When people think of Uganda, they usually think of gorillas, dense jungle, wildlife, and one of Africa's most famous trekking experiences. And to be fair, that Uganda absolutely exists. The country's mountain gorillas attract visitors from around the world, drawing people willing to travel long distances and pay significant sums for a single hour in the presence of one of humanity's closest relatives. But Uganda isn't simply a gorilla destination. It's one of Africa's most geographically diverse countries. And the deeper you travel into it, the more surprising it becomes. The gorillas everyone comes to see. For many travelers, Uganda begins in Bwindi Impenetrable Forest, a place where mist moves through ancient trees that have stood for thousands of years, and where one of the world's rarest animals still survives against considerable odds. Mountain gorillas live in these forests, existing in small family groups that move through the dense vegetation following patterns and hierarchies that researchers have spent decades trying to understand. Hidden among steep hills and dense vegetation that makes every step of the approach physically demanding. The journey to find them can take hours, moving through undergrowth, crossing streams, and climbing slopes that offer no easy path. It's one of the most extraordinary wildlife experiences on Earth. But even here, you're only seeing one side of Uganda, the mountains of the West. Western Uganda reveals a landscape many visitors never expect. The Rwenzori Mountains rise above the horizon with a presence that dominates everything around them. Clouds drift through the valleys continuously, rolling in from the Congo Basin and settling between peaks that seem to disappear into the sky. And tea plantations cover the hills in a green so deep and uniform that the landscape looks almost sculpted. These mountains were once known as the Mountains of the Moon, a name given by ancient geographers who placed them at the center of African mystery and imagination. And their snow-capped peaks stand surprisingly close to the equator, defying expectations about what equatorial Africa should look like. The scenery feels very different from the African landscapes many travelers imagine when they book their flights. Cooler, greener, and incredibly diverse in ways that reward slow, attentive travel rather than rushed itineraries. The source of the Nile. One of Uganda's greatest surprises flows directly through the country. The Nile. For thousands of years, explorers searched for its source, mounting expeditions that cost fortunes, and sometimes lives in pursuit of an answer that felt impossibly elusive. In Jinja, the Nile feels powerful in a way that's difficult to fully prepare for. Fast-moving water crashes through narrow gorges. Rapids send white water high into the air. And the sheer volume and energy of the river makes everything around it seem small by comparison. It's difficult to stand beside one of the world's great rivers and not feel its significance pressing against you. Not just as a geographic landmark, but as a thread connecting Uganda to thousands of years of human history, exploration, and mythology. But the Nile is only part of Uganda's story. Most visitors leave Uganda thinking they've seen the country. They've trekked to the gorillas, perhaps rafted the Nile, and returned home with photographs that capture individual moments from a much larger picture. But the deeper you travel, the more it changes. The landscapes multiply, the cultures shift, and the country reveals itself in layers that no single itinerary can fully contain. If you enjoy discovering destinations beyond the obvious, this channel is built for that. The savannas few travelers expect. Many people don't realize that Uganda also offers incredible safari landscapes that rival anything found elsewhere on the continent. National parks stretch across the western and northern regions, covering vast areas of open grassland, woodland, and wetland that support wildlife populations of remarkable diversity. Elephants move across open plains in herds that raise dust clouds visible from miles away. Hippos gather in rivers and crater lakes, surfacing and submerging in rhythms that seem unhurried by anything happening around them. This is another Uganda that many travelers never expect, and one that consistently surprises those who finally arrive: the green heart of Africa. One of the first things many visitors notice about Uganda is how green it is. Not the dry, sparse green of semi-arid landscapes, but a deep, saturated green that covers almost everything and gives the country a lushness that feels constant. Rainfall and fertile soils support agriculture across much of the country, creating landscapes where food grows abundantly and farming shapes the texture of daily life. Rolling hills stretch toward the horizon in every direction, each one layered with smallholder farms, banana plantations, and patches of native forest that have survived between cultivated land. This fertility helped give Uganda its nickname, the Pearl of Africa. And it's easy to understand why when you watch morning light move across hills that seem to generate their own quiet abundance. Life around Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria is the largest lake in Africa and the second largest freshwater lake on Earth. Numbers that become comprehensible only when you stand at its edge and realize that the opposite shore is simply not visible. And it influences life across much of Uganda in ways that go far beyond geography. Fishing communities line its shores, organized around routines that haven't changed fundamentally in generations despite everything that has changed around them. It's part of daily life, part of regional economy, and part of an ecosystem that supports millions of people across multiple countries. And it adds yet another layer to a country already filled with contrasts that feel almost impossible to fully absorb in a single visit. Why travelers are discovering Uganda. Uganda remains one of Africa's less visited destinations, sitting outside the routes that draw the largest crowds to the continent each year. But that's beginning to change as more travelers seek out places that offer depth rather than familiarity. Travelers are looking beyond the continent's traditional routes, moving past the established safari circuits and finding countries that reward curiosity more than convenience, and discovering a country that offers wildlife, mountains, lakes, and culture within relatively short distances of each other. The gorillas in Bwindi, the Nile at Jinja, the Rwenzori peaks in the west, the savannas of the national parks, Lake Victoria spreading south toward Tanzania and Kenya, all of it accessible within a country smaller than many people imagine. Many arrive for the gorillas because Uganda constantly surprises people, and that's part of its appeal. Who this side of Uganda is for. This side of Uganda is for travelers who enjoy discovery and aren't looking for a destination that delivers exactly what they imagined. For people who appreciate diversity, who find something compelling about moving through landscapes that contradict each other within the same country. For those who want wildlife, landscapes, and culture in the same journey without having to choose between them or sacrifice one for another. For travelers who understand that the most memorable experiences often happen in places that haven't been fully packaged for consumption yet, where the infrastructure is imperfect, but the authenticity is undeniable. Because Uganda doesn't fit a single image. It resists easy description and simple categorization in ways that make it genuinely difficult to explain to people who haven't been. And that's exactly what makes it memorable. Uganda isn't simply the land of gorillas. It's mountains, rivers, lakes, forests, wildlife, and some of the most diverse landscapes in Africa gathered together within a country that most travelers pass over on their way somewhere else. And once you move beyond the obvious experience, you realize how much more there is. How many different Ugandas exist beyond the first one you arrived expecting to find? Subscribe for more journeys beyond the tourist version. If you could experience one side of Uganda, what would you choose? The gorillas, the Nile, the mountains, or the savannah?